Hello. Wow, such a wondrous glowing lighting. Welcome to Vision Denial. My name is Sam, and this is World Watch and the highlight videos, mashup videos. Over the last 6 weeks, I had made weekly videos where I discuss my thoughts watching every single playoff game, yes, including that one, of all 11 participating regions. Those have come and gone, and I'm still working on some other videos at this moment, highlighting each and every team to give a quick introduction. But in the meantime, as I'm still working on that, I thought, not quick, but simpler, I will just put in large videos of the highlights, and I'll be putting a multitude of them, one for all of the playoffs in order of how they appeared, and one for each region in order of how they appeared. If you look at the title, that's the video you're watching. So, without further ado, let's just get to the first one. Starting with... It's the first series for the summer split of the VCS in Vietnam. We've got the Saigon Buffaloes versus Team Secret. And this was really one-sided until not so much. It just wasn't even close on so many levels. Just like all one-sided series, it's a little harder to evaluate things as is. Given the situation on how Game 3 played out, a lot of the earlier mistakes show up on a lot more obvious situations. The Buffaloes have incredible persistence to make any play work, fantastic vision denial and neutral approach, incredibly proactive. But then in Game 3, Team Secret showed the weakness at hand, which is the map movement is incredibly delayed and uncoordinated across the team, and the ability to siege and play side lanes is not much better. Granted, Team Secret also had these issues, and if they want to manage climbing up the lower bracket for a spot at Worlds, they'll need to make some course corrections. Because both of these teams showed fantastic approaches to the fundamentals, but it's not as encouraging when it comes to some of their positional errors, map movements, and just the way that they manipulate side lanes, as that's something that'll be punished on the international stage even harder, let alone what is likely going to be the Marines really in full force. Shout out to Bean, Jay, and Taki, who during a lot of these different fights that they've created and saved also ended up really creating a lot of space that split up Team Secret in very novel and interesting ways. Let's take a look at the next series. Off to Vietnam, where we've got GAM Esports versus SBTC Esports. I'm going to just call them the Roosters for obvious reasons. Now, I thought that GAM would come in and win the series a clean 3-0. They've had such an excellent year. Then, I thought that the Roosters would have a competitive series and take us to 5 games. Then just some confusion overall. The Roosters show some really interesting approaches to the game. Notably, its very lane-focused approach and the neutral second. The Roosters look for proactive plays that specifically involved accumulation of gold, which means a lot of skirmishes while ahead and mostly turret farming while behind. Now, GAM played similarly, but with stronger emphasis on neutrals that were available. While not incredibly one-sided, it looked like the fights that were happening around these objectives were regularly in GAM's favor, regardless of the gold difference. And I think the bigger takeaway mostly from that is that it's just the ways in which the Roosters struggled to close out games compared to their opponents. Hopefully, as they enter the lower bracket, they can shore up they can shore up some of those weaknesses, because honestly, game 3 from them looked really good until it didn't, especially with the random flank like engage is what really did that in. That said, GAM for their part are definitely still the stronger team. The most of the executions in terms of visions, engage, neutral setups, so on and so forth, but the way they draft make it so it's much harder for them to approach their win conditions or even their regular playstyle. So we'll have to see if they can adjust that when they head up to the upper bracket. Now, shout out to Levy and Style, who really pushed the limits of GAM's team fighting to a totally different level. Let's take a look at the next series. And we're into the VCS with the lower bracket elimination for round 1. We've got, and this is from Vietnam, VCS, we've got over here Team Secret versus SBTC Esports. I'll be calling them the Roosters. This was an interesting series. Now, I think that the Roosters struggled to come up with a variety of plays that help them, how to approach most of their fundamentals. They hold like some solid neutral setup, some excellent vision play, and instead of working around all of that, they either handshake trades around the map where they could win those trades instead of just handshaking them, or create a repetitive play over and over again that worked at the start of the game for sure and worked for a little bit, but as it keeps getting executed is done worse and worse over time. As Team Secret just really gets to, get used to their approach to it. I wish they were doing something else most of the time. The Roosters show that when ahead they can keep control, but that their proactivity is severely limited, and they rely on Secret to make mistakes for the most part. Secret, for their part, are rather sloppy in terms of their early game and in terms of their vision. But, they have solid coordination and team fight presence and a good sense on how to approach neutral objectives and stronger draft sense overall. Good idea of how to approach their win conditions and all of that. The only thing is that they regularly throw themselves at the bus, so to speak, where any play at any given time or aggressive posturing leads them to either throw their lead or relinquish control of the map. And most of the time, they end up course correcting during the games itself, but it's enough to notice a trend that stronger teams will abuse to force errors out of Secret, who seem more than willing to throw themselves for the pace of the game, which is awesome, but positioning matters in this situation. Shout out to Hero02 and Eddie, who absorbed a lot of pressure and managed to get a lot done during the team fights. Take a look at the next series. And we're off to Vietnam in the VCS's upper bracket semifinals. We've got Saigon Buffaloes versus GAM Esports, also known as the Marines. And congratulations to the Buffaloes on being the 11th team to qualify for Worlds. And I would not be surprised if GAM were to follow right after. Both teams have styles that complement each other to make an interesting series. While both have excellent vision, GAM is a little bit more defensive, while the Buffaloes are more river-focused. They both have opportunities to show that they play with aggressive vision, but that tends to be their, go-to. Both are proactive, but the Buffaloes focus on neutral control, while GAM focus on wave manipulations and flanking. This leads to moments where one team would make a proactive move for just the other to contest or answer elsewhere, and then they switch positions where the other one is proactive and then the other has to contest. It was very nice. And the pace of these games never stopped, rarely ever being in the hand of one or the other for very long. I think that the Buffaloes drafted more consistent to their style, while GAM had a lot more flexibility within their drafts, but not always really leaning into their play style overall. And looking at this particular series, and I'm comparing Team Secret, who was just waiting in the lower bracket, they wouldn't even fare properly against GAM or the Marines, who would be just it would just be hard. Because of the two of the series, GAM is the more aggressive and consistently proactive, sometimes to their detriment when uncoordinated. I would always give them the edge. And, it's just really unfortunate. Now, and despite their loss for GAM, it mostly played onto the backs of who had the better execution when they held control, and the Buffaloes won out and were a lot more consistent with giving that part. Still, I'm of the impression that the Marines will join the Buffaloes as the second rep for the VCS at Worlds. It's just a matter of formality. Shout out to Bean J and Shogun, who during laning phase and team fights really maximized any and every lead the Buffaloes could get. Let's take a look at the next series.
It's the semifinals for the Vietnamese VCS. We've got GAM Esports versus Team Secret. And congratulations to GAM on being the 15th team to qualify for Worlds. No one should be surprised. You'd be hard-pressed to think that that there was going to be any other result for this series. But Secret did surprise me in the first half of Game 1, where Team Secret had more consistent vision, stronger draft, and a proper approach to the win condition. The second they started misplaying by the late stage of Game 1 is when it started to get worse from then during. And then as that happened for the series, it just got better for GAM across the series. Now, Team Secret had a sense of cohesion, but as the series went on, the team had weaker vision play, sloppy dives, and teamfight approaches, and just began walking in a line to just get killed instead of playing around GAM's slower early game. Now, GAM still show proactivity overall and an incredible understanding of the limits of their draft, and I found myself very mesmerized, oftentimes not even typing when they approach neutral objectives. The level of coordination to find the vision setup, start the objective, secure it, turn, all in one swift, synchronized motion, like a machine almost, is something really to behold. Which is a shame, because that's not the team we saw against the Buffaloes, or even in Game 1 of this series. But given the slow buildup that GAM had across for the summer season, it's not surprising if coming this finals against the Buffaloes, they, for their rematch series, no matter on top of it, they would turn it around. Because at this moment, the way they played out this series, they look unstoppable. Shout out to Katsi and Levy, who controlled the early game tempo and zoning of all of the fights. Let's take a look at the next series. It's the grand finals of the Vietnamese VCS and another rematch, but this time it's utterly one-sided. Holy shit. We've got GAM Esports versus Saigon Buffaloes, and it is night and day for GAM, as their approach to the game has seemingly changed overnight, where once there was this very side lane focus to the game, has now become a direct attack on how the Buffaloes approach theirs usually. Full Drake control was the MO. Not a single Drake was uncontested, and only one across all three games were lost. GAM knew how to play side lanes, and it was just a matter of scaling that became an issue for them, and they adjusted that right away. And once it was solved by really focusing on the Drakes for this series, it was just about being more coordinated and better at the setup. And GAM showed some of the strongest neutral setup for the early game that I have seen so far out of the teams that have qualified for Worlds. And the Buffaloes the entire time seemed rather lost and confused as to how to approach the series. Previously, the Buffaloes attacked GAM on their lack of attention towards neutrals, and once that was shown to no longer be the case from them, the Buffaloes were slow to adapt and even slower to answer any play that was put up in front of them. This is slightly concerning heading into Worlds, where many of the playing teams are very neutral team fight oriented and or play rather flexibly. And the lack of flexibility will be a large factor going into the tournament. And mind you, these two teams are solid under all accounts regarding vision, team fighter approach, and everything else. But with 5, maybe 6 teams who look like they are strong contenders to go on to the group stage from play-ins, any slow adaptation means zero luck to get to that stage of the competition, let alone be competitive within groups. Honestly, really gonna be rough. Shout out to Cuddy and Style, who really navigated the space and maximized their damage. It was really fascinating to watch how they played up those team fights. Let's take a look at the next series. Damn, that was a journey. That's 94 playoffs, or depending on the region that you were watching, anywhere between 5 to 15 best of 5s. If you want to watch from the other regions, or you really want to watch the supercut, on either side, I don't remember which side I'm going to put it on, you can just watch those there. I want to hear your thoughts also on which one of these were your favorite, what teams you think you're going to be rooting for, just anything and everything down below. I'll be again making some videos further down the line, or should have some videos produced further down the line with all of the magic that comes with it. So keep your eyes peeled. And with that, I'll see you all next time for when I do the introductions of all the different teams. Ciao. Thank you all for watching.